Hello and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida for the pre-launch news conference for NASA's SpaceX Crew 2 mission. This will be SpaceX's third flight with crew to the International Space Station as part of the agency's Commercial Crew program. I'm Marie Lewis with NASA Public Affairs, and we have several experts here to break down this mission for us. To my left is Steve Stitch, manager of NASA's Commercial Crew program, Joel Montalbano, manager of NASA's International Space Station program, Benji Reed, senior director of human spaceflight programs at SpaceX, Norm Knight, deputy director of NASA's flight operations, Junichi Sakai, manager of JAXA's International Space Station program, Frank Divina, manager of ESA's International Space Station program, Kurt Costello, chief scientist for NASA's International Space Station program, and Brian Cizik, launch weather officer with the U.S. Air Force's 45th Weather Squadron. Now, you may also have noticed a pair of spacesuits behind our speakers in the room. These are the actual spacesuits worn by astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley during the historic Demo 2 test flight last year. And we have them here as a nod to all that the NASA and SpaceX teams have accomplished. We will take your questions after opening remarks from our guests, and we'll start with Steve Stitch.
Thanks, Marie. It's great to be here today. We had our launch readiness review this morning, jointly between NASA and SpaceX. We reviewed all the open work coming out of the agency flight readiness review and the systems on the vehicles, and we concluded that we're go for launch. So we're still on track for a 6/11 Eastern launch on Thursday, April the 22nd. That would put docking on Friday, April 23rd at around 4:30 a.m. if we launch on Thursday as planned. Over the last 48 hours, it's been a very busy time frame here. Of course, on Saturday, we had the static fire of the first stage of the Crew 2 vehicle, fired all of the 9 Merlin engines, and reviewed all the data from that. Those looked really good, compared really well to the Crew 1 flight, and so no issues coming out of that static fire. On Sunday, the crew got in the vehicle. They suited up in the suit room in O&C, and they walked through that whole timeline of how they'll go out to the launch pad and get in the vehicle and get in their suits and hook the suits up to the vehicle, close the hatch, and the systems on the vehicle performed well. The suits all performed great. It was a great dress rehearsal for launch. As we talked about after the flight readiness review, we did have one issue that we needed to resolve. That was the additional locks liquid oxygen that we thought was on the vehicle from several other SpaceX flights. We looked at that relative to this flight, and we concluded that that amount of liquid oxygen in the first stage was well within family of the guidance, navigation, control analysis and performance analysis, well within the loads and structural capability of the vehicle, and that we could handle any contingencies with that locks on board. So we were go to proceed with that amount of locks on the vehicle, and we had an exception at the flight readiness review. We closed that. I signed that exception, and Kathy Leaders signed that as well. The main thing we're watching over the next few days is the weather. We have to have the launch weather be go, and also abort weather all along the abort ground track to protect the crew and the vehicle. So we'll be looking at both Thursday and Friday and looking at the weather over the next few days. It's just an exciting time to be here. Before coming over here, Benji Reed and I were out at the launch pad and was thinking about all 3 crewed missions. This is our third. The capsule that we're going to fly is a reused capsule that Bob and Doug flew on Demo 2, and then the first stage was used by Crew 1. So it's kind of exciting to see all those 3 missions in that one vehicle at the pad. Thanks, Marie. I'll turn it over to Joel.
Thank you, Steve. And welcome again to today's post-launch readiness review press brief. The month of April has been and will continue to be a banner month for the International Space Station. Every week in the month of April, we have or will do a major human spaceflight dynamic activity. We started the month with a Dragon relocation from the Node 2 forward port to the Zenith port. We followed just a few days later by a Soyuz launch and brought the crew complement on board to 10 people. Just last Friday, we had a Soyuz landing, so 3 people came home, and it allowed us to have 10 people on orbit for about a week, preparing us for the Crew 1, Crew 2 handover mission. We'll have 11 people on board. Our life support systems worked fabulously, no issues at all. And while we're prepared and planning for just a short 5-ish day mission, we're prepared to have both Crew 1 and Crew 2 up there from a consumables standpoint for up to 20 days. This week we're here talking about the Crew 2 launch, and then the last week of the month we'll have the Crew 1 undock and landing. So like I said, just an awesome time to be in human space flight, and just a great place to be working on the International Space Station. With the Crew 2 launch, we welcome the European Space Agency's flying an astronaut for the first time on Dragon. We also welcome back the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency flying on Dragon for a second time. So truly an international program, and this is our future. We'll have international partners on our vehicles for the future. That's a goal, and that's where we're planning to be. This crew will stay up a full duration, approximately 6 months. They'll perform over 260 experiments on board. And one of the major benefits of the Commercial Crew Program is with the fourth crew member, we're allowed to increase the amount of utilization and research we do on board, the amount of technology development we do for the Artemis program, as well as the low Earth orbit commercialization efforts we do. So just an awesome time again to be working on the International Space Station. As I talked after the flight readiness review, April 22nd is Earth Day, and just a reminder, we have a number of experiments on board that are Earth-facing, collecting data every day for our scientists to study the Earth. We also have activities on board, for example, water recovery, that we can repurpose that technology and use it to benefit people here on Earth. So we're excited for this mission. We want to congratulate the Commercial Crew Program, congratulate the SpaceX team, and with that, I'll hand it over to Benji.
Great. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Steve. As always, it's an honor to be here. We're excited to be able to fly Crew again. It's super cool to have the opportunity to do this so quickly, in fact. And of great note, I think if I do my math right, we'll, in less than a year, have flown as many people in this partnership with NASA as were flown in the Mercury program. And that's pretty cool. Number one, always, we want to thank the agencies and our partners, NASA, the Japanese Space Agency, and the European Space Agency, and of course the families of all of the astronauts for their trust in allowing us to fly their astronauts, their family members to space and to bring them home safely again. Not only in this last year have we flown so many, and we'll have the opportunity to fly so many more humans to space, but we also had a couple of other records. It was our first commercial orbital space launch of humans in history, and also our longest mission, the longest mission for an American crew vehicle in history. So a lot of firsts and a lot of good stuff happening. Another thing that I think is really great is that in less than 11 months, the joint NASA and SpaceX team were able to certify reuse. So we are flying, as Steve mentioned, we're flying NASA astronauts on a flight-proven Dragon and a flight-proven Falcon. And so that'll be another first, and a very important thing, as we all have talked before, flying on reused vehicles, on flight-proven vehicles, is key towards greater flight reliability and lowering the cost of access to space, which is ultimately what helps us make life multiplanetary. So this is a great accomplishment, and again, a huge thank you to the NASA teams that worked with us and the international partner teams that have all worked with us to make that a reality coming up this week. We'd also like to thank NASA for the award for the Human Lander System. This is a huge honor, and it's truly a great thing for us to be able to be a part of the Artemis team, and we look forward to making that happen. That program itself, just like the Commercial Crew Program, just like the International Space Station and the programs before it, are pushing human exploration further than ever before, and particularly will push human exploration in a more diverse way than ever before. And this is a great thing. Right now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Crew 2 vehicles and where we stand right now on our launch pad. And we have a video, I think. All right, this is a great drone video. This is what the pad looks like right now. This was taken a couple of days ago, but I was just out there, as Steve mentioned, and you can see it. Great views here of Falcon. You can see the NASA logos on the side. You can see the Dragon on top, The crew arm is extended exactly where the crew will walk across and get into their vehicle to go to space. As many of you will remember, that is the same tower that has been used by the shuttle teams and also by the Apollo crews when they flew to the moon. So it's always an honor to be here at this historic launch pad here at Kennedy Space Center. These are vehicles and the launch pad, and all of our teams are ready. We continue to do a number of tests preparing, I should say a number of analyses of our data, assessments of our data. We've completed thousands and thousands of tests to get to this day, just like we always have in the past and will continue to do. We talk a lot about these kinds of reviews that we do. We call them paranoia reviews. We want to be paranoid, right? We want to make sure that we're going to fly these people safely and be able to bring them home safely when it's time. So we check. We check under every rock, and we double check, and we triple check, and we ask each other, and we challenge each other all the time. We're continuing that process. Another thing that we do is we practice a lot. One of the practices that we did was the dry dress rehearsal, and that's where the crew actually gets suited up. They get into their vehicles, the Model X's that come across, and bring them out to the pad. They go up in that tower that you saw there and across the crew arm. They get into the seats in the Dragon and basically walk through everything on the timeline as if it were launch day. While the crew's doing that, the ground teams are all doing their jobs, and all of our flight operators are in their seats back in Hawthorne, here at the Cape, and elsewhere, walking through the steps, walking through the procedures, and ensuring that we're ready to go. And we take that dry dress up through basically the moment of launch, and ensure that we're going to be ready and practice that. And in fact, our teams are actually doing even additional practices. Like I mentioned, we continue to want to ensure that everything is great, and so we're continuing down that path as we get ready for Thursday. Speaking of that dry dress, I think we've got some photos. There it is. Great shot. Again, you can see the vehicle, but in front of the vehicle down there is the crew. And we should always talk about who they are and who they are as people. We've got Megan and Shane and Hockey and Thomas. There's a lot of families there. There's a lot of hard work and time that they've put in, the astronauts and also their families and all the people who've supported them over the years. It's important that they are able to get up and do their job on the space station, do all the great science that the station does. And in particular in my heart, I know there's a little boy out there whose mom is flying. And this is something that we pay a lot of attention to. We ask ourselves all the time, would we be willing to fly our families on these vehicles? And that's kind of a test for us. And this is a great shot of them. And if you get to know them and watch them and they go through training, they're just a fun team, an excellent team. I think they designed a great patch. And you can see them there in the crew arm right now. All right, let me just talk a moment about weather. And we'll hear more from our weather officer about the local weather and the launch weather, but it's always a good reminder that it's not just about launch day when we're launching crew. We have to worry about the entire ascent trajectory, because if something goes wrong, we want Dragon to be able to launch escape off of the rocket. And that means they have to be able to come down in the ocean at all points along that potential escape path. So we're watching weather, not just here at the Cape, but all along that path up the northern seaboard across the Atlantic. And we're not just looking at, say, rain or something like that. We're looking at winds and wave height and lightning, all kinds of things to make sure it's right. So many, many points along that track, we're watching it. So fundamentally, there are a number of places where we can say, we don't feel good enough about flying the crew today. And so while we're aiming for Thursday, as Steve talked about at 6:11 Eastern, we'll watch the weather and we'll make a decision. If we need to, we'll move to that next day on Friday. And just in terms of the launch opportunities, based on orbits of the space station, we have 2 days on and 2 days off. So our first two launch opportunities are here Thursday and Friday. As Steve mentioned, a little bit less than 24 hours, we'll be docking to the space station based on this first opportunity. They'll be up there for about 6 months. And it's important always to be thinking about the crew that we'll be bringing home just a few days after that. And of course, bringing that crew home is very important. All of our recovery crews are ready. They also have been training and reviewing and practicing and checking all of their hardware, and they're ready for those crews to come home and come and get them. Finally, I think it's always important to thank all of the different groups. There's a lot of the NASA centers that are involved. Of course, we've got Kennedy and Johnson and Marshall, who all play a key role on the commercial crew program and supporting us. And of course, we have the 45th Space Wing here at the Canaveral Space Force Station, and Det-3, who also is there to support us in case of an emergency. Thank you to all of them. And again, just thank you to the astronauts and their families. We look forward to flying you to space.
Norm?
Let's see. Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with my colleagues. It's an exciting time. We're 48 hours from launch, and this is where all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed as we all count down to launch time. I had an opportunity to talk with Shane. The crew is doing great. They're really excited. As Benji said, dry dress went very well, and again, just on our way to launch. The crew is getting an opportunity today to get more briefings, get prepped for launch, spend some time with their family. They get a little bit of downtime tomorrow, waking up very early on Thursday morning for the launch. The reviews that have been talked a lot about culminated today with the launch readiness review, and those reviews have been extremely thorough, and especially with the refurbished Falcon and Dragon. We're very convinced that it's safe to fly. Safety has been number one in all these reviews, and that's the way it should be. This business of human spaceflight is unforgiving. It's the vigilance from the teams that guarantee that continued safety, and it was definitely present in these reviews this week. And you step back and you look, it's hard enough in a regular environment, but you put COVID on top of that. It's been exceptionally impressive what these teams have been able to pull together. The cadence is very good for the teams between SpaceX and NASA. People are working well with each other. We're looking forward to a successful mission, and again, it's just a very exciting time. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you very much. On behalf of JAXA, first of all, on behalf of JAXA, I would like to sincerely thank NASA leadership, SpaceX, all the colleagues who work so hard for Crew 2 launch preparation and continuing ISS operation under such tough situations. Countdown to the Crew 2 launch is close to beginning. It is a great pleasure for me to be here with you. I welcomed Crew 2 crew at the LCC last Friday. They looked so cheerful and confident. I spoke with the Japanese astronaut Hoshide Akihiko Aki. I have confidence he is ready for the launch. The Japanese experimental module Kibo is also ready and waiting for a new crew's arrival. I am very excited at the two Japanese astronauts, Noguchi Soichi and Aki, will meet together in orbit. I'm looking forward to the coming launch and wishing a great success. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning here in the US and good afternoon all in Europe that are following this. I would also like to start to thank the NASA and the SpaceX teams to get us this far and this close to the launch. We are very excited, of course, that for the first time a European astronaut, Thomas, can also fly on the Crew Dragon to the International Space Station. The ESA teams here in the Cape, but also in Europe already, to support the launch and to support, of course, the Alpha mission in its entirety in the International Space Station. As Joe mentioned, it's an exciting time. We have 4 USOS crew members on orbit, and so we have plenty of crew time available to do the science that we need to do on behalf of the European Space Agency, the European scientists, but also scientists around the world. Some highlights: we have the grip grasp experiment, for example, that Thomas commissioned during his first flight and installed, and he's now going to do the final subject for this experiment as well. We will do some experiments around immunology, and we can all understand, I think, in times of COVID, how important the understanding of our human immune system is for the future of all of us here on Earth. We have also a big complement of experiments from CNES, our French partner agency, that is of course also supporting Thomas during this flight. We don't only have experiments, we also have a number of other highlights in this mission. On the 15th of July, the MLM module will launch from Baikonur, and attached to that module will be the European robotic arm. It's a program that we had launched long time ago, and we are waiting since long time to commission the European robotic arm as a part of the infrastructure of the space station. And Thomas will also play a role in the initial commissioning of the ERA. And finally, this is just the start for us of a series of missions. We will have Thomas now, but we will have Matthias Maurer from Germany flying by the end of the year, also on a SpaceX vehicle to the International Space Station. And then next year we will have Samantha Cristoforetti flying. So for 1.5 years permanently we will have European astronauts on board of the space station. So exciting times for Europe to be there. And during the last part of his mission, Thomas will be the commander and will be able to welcome Matthias on orbit while he is the commander of the ISS. So thank you again very much to the NASA and the SpaceX teams to getting us here, and we are very excited to go fly.
Thank you, Frank. We're very excited about this international crew flying to this space station. They bring with them the capability to participate in many of the investigations going on, over 260 during this increment alone. A lot of the focus for the investigations flying on the Crew 2 Dragon will be in the human immune function. First, we have celestial immunity, an investigation flown by the pharmaceutical company Sanofi Pasteur, who will be looking at the capability to fly donor peripheral blood mononuclear cells and elicit in them new potential pathways for immunity. Up next will be the CHIME experiment for characterizing human immunodeficiency in the microgravity environment. In this investigation, we'll be flying tissue chips with THP1 cell line. It's a leukemia cell line, and we'll be looking for changes in the immune response based on microgravity as the stimulating factor. We also have some STEM education flying on the Crew Dragon 2. That will be the Storytime in Space 8 demonstration package, which is a heat transfer demo experiment that's going to go along with our demonstration of reading in space. And that story will be part of our celebration of the Australian Literacy Day on May 19th. You can read along with another 1 million+ young readers, and we encourage you to participate. Last but not least, I would be amiss if I didn't mention we're launching on Earth Day. As Joel said, we've got many investigations on board the spacecraft looking down at the Earth, sponsored by our Science Mission Directorate. And we also have the crew, who have the best seat in the house for this event, and I'm sure it'll look great. Thank you.
And now for a weather update from our Launch Weather Officer, Brian Sizek.
And good morning. My name is Brian Sizek. I'm a Launch Weather Officer with the 45th Weather Squadron. And as Benji mentioned, I do want to emphasize that I'll be speaking primarily to the weather here in the launch area, so the launch conditions. Unlike the weather we've been seeing over the last few days here in Central Florida, the weather here in the area is looking pretty good for Thursday and Friday. So if we could take a live look at the satellite imagery. So this is the infrared satellite imagery. You can see a lot of cloud cover over Florida right now, and that's due to a front that's kind of just been stalled out over our area. We've just had some waves of low pressure riding along it, bringing some wet and stormy weather over the last few days. But there is some a strong area of high pressure up in the Montana area, and that's going to be coming to the rescue. That's going to be pushing to the south and to the east over the next few days, and that's going to be help clearing out all of that moisture and pushing that front farther to the south by Thursday and Friday. So if we could go to the launch forecast, and you can see we have a 20% probability of violation, so 80% favorable. The winds are going to be a bit brisk, 17 to 22 miles per hour coming from the north-northeast, as that high pressure is still centered fairly far away to the north and west, still in control, but it is going to create a bit of a pressure gradient. So the primary concern will be the liftoff winds, but just a 20% chance of that POV. And as we go to the backup day, looking even better, winds die down a little bit, 12 to 17 miles per hour, and as that high slides farther to the east, we are going to see the winds shift to more of an easterly direction, temperature at 70 degrees, and just a small chance of flight through precipitation, but just a 10% POV, so looking 90% favorable for that backup day on Friday. And that concludes my portion of the brief.
Thank you so much, Brian. And now we will open it up to questions on our phone line. I do want to remind folks, in order to get to as many of you as possible, we ask that you limit yourself to one question and also let us know who you are asking it to. So we will start with Gina Sunseri from ABC News. Gina?
Good morning. This one's for Joel. 11 people on the space station presents a certain challenge, sleeping, etc. What adjustments did you have to make for this?
I didn't quite, I think you said, can you repeat the question?
Did you ask what kind of adjustments do you need to make on the space station for this many crew? Was that the question?
Yes.
And so, you know, there's a number of things you have to do. We have to fly some additional consumables for the extra crew members. Of course, you have to look at sleeping arrangements. We'll have some temporary sleeping arrangements for the crew members because we have so many people. We have to increase the capacity of our life support systems, so our oxygen generation, our carbon dioxide removal. We also, once we get the crew members on board, they'll first do an emergency kind of drill to make sure that the crews are ready for emergencies. But these are standard things that we've done for handovers in the past. So for this one, the cool thing again is that the added crew member allows another set of hands on board to help us with research and utilization, our technology development, as well as our low Earth orbit commercialization.
All right, thank you, Joel. Next question is from Marcia Dunn with the Associated Press. Marcia?
Yes, good morning. My question's for Benji, please. I'm interested in the reuse. When you're flying crews, do you have any maximum number of flights that you would use the capsule and Falcon for, and would you anticipate like reusing a Dragon capsule every year like you seem to be starting out to do? In spacesuits, can they be altered for reuse, or do you plan to donate the two behind you? Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Those are great questions. So first of all, I'm hoping that nobody notices when I take one of the spacesuits home with me after this briefing. No, actually, everybody here has asked if they can try one on, but I think there's a do not touch sign. So in terms of the suits, I'll start there since I'm making terrible jokes about them. But the reality is that the suits are somewhat custom tailored for each astronaut. So they are those astronauts' suits, and we don't really plan to reuse those. There's a lot of crew equipment, though, that we do reuse, as part of the overall system. And so, again, we go through the certification and qualification process with NASA to be able to reuse those as well. In terms of your questions about the vehicles, the Dragon from the beginning, the Dragon 2 vehicle, which is, of course, has the crew and the cargo variant, designed for 5 reuses at least. We've been qualifying to that, and we've been working with NASA on a number of the components to look at 5. There are some components that we will put new on, we'll replace. Some will work through other qualifications and certifications to see how far we can go with reuse for those. Falcon, of course, we used to talk that was qualified for up to 10 flights, but we're continuing to push that for non-human missions, right? We want to see how far we can go, and really, again, the sort of the holy grail of space flight is reusability. So it's important that we do that. But in terms of human space flight for Falcon, right now we're working with NASA. We're certified for this upcoming reuse, and we're continuing our work together as a team to assess how many more flights we'd be able to reuse Falcons for.
All right, thank you, Benji. The next question is from Stephen Clark at Spaceflight Now. Stephen?
Thank you. Stephen Clark, Spaceflight Now. I was wondering if maybe the LWO or Steve Stitch can talk about, or Benji can talk about the forecast for the downrange weather. How are things looking right now? Is it looking good? Is it marginal? And when do you tag up to have a brief on the abort and recovery weather to make that decision whether to load the crew on Thursday morning? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll take that question. So we have weather briefings starting about 48 hours out from launch. In fact, we had our first one this morning, looking at both days, primarily Thursday and Friday. The launch weather looks really good for both days, as Brian talked about. The only concern was really winds around the pad for that very first opportunity on Thursday. Downrange weather is a little bit trickier as this high pressure system moves over the Arkansas area. That combined with this front is causing some pretty high winds in some of the areas downrange and some pretty high waves, and so we'll have to watch those. Of the 2 days right now, I would say Friday looks a little bit better than Thursday. We'll continue to watch that weather. I have another briefing 24 hours out tomorrow and take a look at those 2 days, and then we'll figure out what the right time to make the decision is, whether it's tomorrow or taking it down a little closer into launch. So.
Thank you, Steve. The next question is from Irene Klotz with Aviation Week. Irene?
Good morning. My question is for Benji Reed. With the HLS award, how will that impact the development and testing of Starship? And are there any lessons learned already from the commercial crew program that SpaceX plans on folding into the human rating of the HLS system? Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. That's a good question. And obviously, I'll mostly focus on crew and commercial crew, since that's the topic of today on our Crew 2 launch and Crew 1 return coming up. But I will certainly say that as we work with NASA just like we do with everything, as we go through development for our use, for other customers' use, we always work closely with NASA in a very transparent and tight partnership. We like to say that we fly because of technical excellence and also transparency. And it's a key cornerstone of how we work together with NASA. So we'll always continue that path and do good things in that direction. In terms of lessons learned from commercial crew, that's a great question generally, and applied even here to Crew 2. Every flight we fly with people on board and every test that we do towards those flights is lessons and data that we use to make flights safer and more reliable for other crews in the future on whatever vehicle they may be on. So absolutely, we will leverage all information we have every time for future Dragon flights and for other flights. And even for all of our other customers, whether we're flying cargo or satellites or anything else, we'll always be applying those lessons to look for reliability.
Thank you, Benji. The next question is from David Curley with the Discovery Channel. David?
Thanks very much. Benji, I think we're hoping you could tell us a little more about Starship than that. And Steve Stitch, on the LOX issue, is it, can you give us a volume? We only heard inches. Is it less than 1%, 1 or 2%? What was the acceptable number of volume percentage-wise? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll address the LOX question first. So I don't have the exact percentage of volume. When Bill Gerstenmaier was here last Thursday, he talked about a few inches. I would say it's on the order of 2,500 or 3,000 pounds of extra LOX. And so if you look at the mass of that vehicle, it's a very small percentage of the total weight of the vehicle. The system can handle that from a performance perspective. We can handle that extra weight on the vehicle. The tank can handle the loading from that extra LOX. And then there's a vent system and a contingency that would relieve pressure on the tank if it needs to. It can certainly accommodate that LOX. So we've had that. SpaceX went back and looked at their flight history, and it's been there potentially for some time, and lots of different flights with lots of different loading. So when we looked at our specific flight and the analysis for this trajectory we're going to fly, we felt very comfortable with going ahead and proceeding with the flight. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Stitch. Next question is from Ken Kramer from Space Up Close.
Thank you. Thanks for taking my question, and good luck on Thursday or Friday when it happens. I guess my question is for Frank Davina. I'd like you to talk a little bit more about the European robotic arm. What are you going to use it for? What missions will it carry out? And can you also talk about the cadence of ESA astronauts? Do you expect them to be there continuously? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. Yes, great questions. For the European robotic arm, this is a cooperative program that we have with our Russian colleagues from Roscosmos. The arm is built in Europe, but eventually will be operated by the colleagues from Roscosmos for the benefit of the Russian segment. I know that they have some airlock relocations, for example, that they want to do with it. There are a number of science payloads that they want to install at the outside of the Russian segment. So that are the initial operations that are planned for the next year and a half, and then we will have to see how the ERA will be used to further enhance the Russian the Russian segment of the International Space Station. And we are actually in support of our Russian colleagues for the operations and for the execution of all the tasks that they will plan for the European robotic arm. In terms of the cadence of the astronauts, yes, we will now have 3 astronauts in a row on board of the ISS. Our plan is to have at least 1 European astronaut mission per year, like we had in the past, to the International Space Station. And that is for us very important, of course, to continue our scientific program, but also to continue to leverage the support of our European member states for the ISS. As you might know, we are starting a new astronaut selection this year. We will have the new selectees recruited probably by the end of 22, beginning of 23. And then it's our hope that those new people can all fly to the ISS beginning in 25. So therefore, for us, the extension of the International Space Station beyond 2024 is, of course, key, and we are working with all our international partners and NASA on moving forward to the extension of the ISS.
All right, thank you, Frank. That will do it for our questions. I know our guests here today have already had a long day, and it's only 8:30 in the morning, so we will wrap it up now. As a reminder, our next media event for this mission is a briefing with the NASA administrator and others. That is happening at the Countdown Clock at Kennedy Space Center tomorrow, April 21st at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and you can, of course, watch it here on NASA TV. Following that is a NASA social event at 9:15 a.m. Eastern Time, and you can watch that live on NASA's Kennedy Space Center Facebook and YouTube channels. Launch, once again, is scheduled for Earth Day, Thursday, April 22nd at 6:11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Launch coverage here on NASA TV starts at 2 a.m. Thursday morning, just before crews suit up, and live coverage will continue all the way through docking at the International Space Station, scheduled for approximately 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time Friday morning. For more about this mission, go to nasa.gov/commercial crew. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.